First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my cousin what our family were saying about his wife and causing him to cut everyone off financially? My uncle had a kid from an affair who he abandoned to the system. My grandmother found out when he was 12 and took him in. This was a huge scandal, not only our family but also our social circle, because everyone is all about appearances and protecting the family legacy. If I'm being honest, my family weren't very nice about my cousin. I remember when he first came to live with our grandparents, my own mother told me not to socialize with him too much in front of outsiders so he doesn't ruin my reputation. I was 8. When he graduated, the family didn't want him involved in the family business because of his parentage and also because he was pretty closed off and was only close to our grandparents and no one else in the family. So our grandfather gave him some money to start something of his own. The family business hasn't been doing well for a long time, but my cousin is doing better than ever. Despite everything, he's been financially helping all of us for a few years now. Recently, our grandparents told everyone he was married and expecting a baby. This was a huge shock to the family. Our grandfather admitted he suspects our cousin got the woman pregnant by mistake and chose to do the right thing based on a few conversations he had with him before he announced his marriage. My family immediately cyber-talked his wife, and they said some awful things about her, and everyone was complaining that he could have done so much better. My dad was even encouraging everyone to make things hell for her so she leaves. I told my cousin what they said. I'd like to say I did it for selfless reasons, but I didn't. He's paying for my tuition after my parents refused to help since I dropped out the first time, and based on his personality, I doubt he's going to be very forgiving once they started this crusade against his pregnant wife. Well, he cut everyone off except me and our grandparents. He never told anyone it was me, but since everyone is floundering trying to figure out what they're going to do now and I'm not, it didn't take much for them to figure out I was the snitch. Now, my family are angry at me and calling me all sorts of names. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. They never accepted him as a family member. If they never accepted him, why do they deserve his help? They don't. They were mooching off him and only wanted his money. They didn't care about treating him like family. You were right to let him know exactly how they felt about him and his pregnant wife. You seem to actually care and accept him as family, so it's not selfish to let him know. He may be helping you with college, but you care and treat him well. You have accepted him as family. Good job. Not the a-hole. The biggest and best indicator that you're not the a-hole is precisely because what you said below. Now, my family are angry at me and calling me all sorts of names. Your family is messed up, so what they think is wrong is most certainly what's right and decent. Not the a-hole. Stick with the grandparents who've proven they'll stand by their grandchildren, like they did with their cousin. And your cousin who has done things out of the kindness of his heart. These people have been nothing but awful. Get the hell out of your parents' sphere of influence as soon as you can. Not the a-hole. Never piss off the one holding purse strings. Even if your motive were less than pure, you did the right thing to let him know what they say behind his back. Another saying I heard was, never bite the hand that feeds you. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for forcing my brother-in-law to hold my baby, his nephew, just for a bit while I was folding laundry and traumatizing my brother-in-law? I honestly didn't know the reason why he was so reluctant. This happened a few days ago. So, while I, 25 female, was around 6 months pregnant, my husband, 25 male, was unfortunately furloughed from his job, so we moved into his brother's, 38 male, house. His brother's fairly well off, and I'm not exactly sure what he does for a living, but he's mostly just in his office from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., so I don't really interact with him. I do appreciate that he let us move in while we were in a tight spot. When we moved in, he made it a hard rule that I will have nothing to do with the baby, so don't expect anything from me. But otherwise, y'all can have free reign of the house. That was 5 months ago. Brother-in-law actually doesn't really interact with any of his nieces or nephews. Sister-in-law's kids, 4 of them all under 10, as my husband has told me. Though he does send them gifts for birthdays and stuff, but definitely not an involved uncle. Skip to now, we have a beautiful baby boy. And brother-in-law stayed true to his words of not wanting anything to do with his nephew, and he just mostly stays in his office. My husband thankfully landed a job in the same field as his last job about a week ago. And even better, he's able to work from home. So we're set to move when we can save up a little more. And he was working when everything went down. Yesterday, while I was folding laundry, my son was getting fuzzy and wanted to be held. And at that moment, my brother-in-law came out of his office to grab something. I asked him if he could just quickly hold his nephew while I finished up folding laundry. Casually just says, "Nah, I'm good," and started to walk away. I admit I got really freaking mad at that point. Like, he can't even help for a minute while I finish up folding laundry? So I picked up my son and walked over to brother-in-law and placed him in his hands and said, "Just help out. It's just a baby. It won't kill you or anything." My yelling upset my son, so he started crying. He handed me back my child and very coldly says, "I told you, I'm good." And then he quickly retreated to his office. I was left really confused. And then my husband came out of the room he was working in to see what all the commotion was about. I explained what happened, and he just starts freaking out and said I shouldn't have done that. And he goes off to talk to his brother. My husband is now demanding I apologize to brother-in-law and explained something no one has ever told me. Apparently, brother-in-law had a wife 10 years ago who passed during childbirth, and the child later passed due to other complications, and brother-in-law never really got over it. My heart sank. I asked why I was never told this, and all he said is, "My brother's a very private guy, and it wasn't any of your business knowing his past. Please just apologize to him." But I wasn't able to. He has yet to come out of his office or room, and my husband just leaves food at brother-in-law's door. So I want some outside perspective. Am I the a-hole for forcing my brother-in-law to hold his nephew but accidentally opened a pretty bad scar? Now for the top comments. Laughing my butt off. OP. Isn't homeless because brother-in-law was being kind and gracious. Brother-in-law. I just have one boundary. Keep your baby away from me. OP. Gets pissy and forces brother-in-law to hold the baby. Husband. You should apologize for breaking boundaries and picking fights with a man who is keeping a roof over our heads. OP. Shocked Pikachu face. Yeah, you're the a-hole. Not everyone feels comfortable with kids. You already got a freaking house from the guy. You owe him, not the other way around. This is some Greek mythology gourmet stuff. Like, did OP never read the legends and myths? When a dude does something benevolent with a strange yet non-harmful boundary, you keep that boundary. No means no. You're the a-hole. You're the a-hole. He said no. No means no. Yes, you're a giant a-hole for bullying a grown man into doing what you wanted. It doesn't even matter why I didn't want to hold your baby, but it does make it that much worse. You owe him a very sincere apology. They literally live in the guy's house, but still thinks it's okay to cross the one boundary he had. You're the a-hole. No means no. He does not mean no, but this one time I'll make an exception, lols. You don't need to know the reason why. You just needed to respect his one house rule. He was kind enough to let you stay there while you and your hubby got back on your feet, and he only had one thing he asked of you, and you still couldn't follow through with that. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my future sister-in-law that I won't be attending her child-free wedding, causing a lot of my other family members to drop out as well? My future sister-in-law is marrying my brother next summer, and they are planning to have a child-free wedding. I have about 3 other sisters and we all have kids, as do most of my cousins at this point. Our family is kinda spread out over the country, and my brother/sister-in-law's wedding is out of the state for most of us. Once I found out they wanted to make it child-free, I began to lose interest in going to the wedding. I don't want to be away from my kids for a couple of days, and it is just a hassle to find them living arrangements for when my husband and I are gone, especially since most of our adult family members will be at the wedding. We'd have to leave the kids with some friends. However, I get that it is her wedding and her decision, so I just declined to go, stating that I don't want to leave my kids alone without any family to watch them. After I dropped out, my other sisters got the courage to drop out as well, as they also have toddlers they didn't want to leave behind for a couple of days. Then, my cousins began declining to come as well. Now, it has become a huge deal in the family and caused a lot of drama. My brother has called me and yelled at me, saying that I was the one who caused all the problems. I was firm when I told him I wasn't going to his wedding unless I could bring my kids, and that all our sisters/cousins pretty much felt the same way. My parents, who are paying for half of their wedding, are also pissed that so many family members on our side aren't coming. They were already somewhat against the idea of a child-free wedding in the first place, and have now started pressuring sister-in-law to not make it child-free. My sister-in-law refuses to meet in the middle, and says the wedding will remain child-free, but she's also mad at all of us for not coming. She also still expects my parents to help pay for it, which I doubt they'll do at this point. Lol. I'm fine with her having a child-free wedding. I just don't want to be part of it if it means being away from my kids for days. Am I the a-hole? Edit. People keep asking why I'm mostly talking about my sister-in-law and not my brother in the post. I know for a fact my brother was okay with having kids at the wedding. It's the norm in our family, and he loves his nieces/nephews. It's my sister-in-law who wants this to be a child-free thing against the wishes of like 95% of our family and still have my parents foot the bill. My brother's just supporting her to make her happy. Edit. She has an entire 4-day itinerary planned with like 6 events that she expects to all be child-free. Are all of us with toddlers and kids supposed to swing back and forth from hiding our kids in hotels with random sitters to all the wedding activities just to keep my psycho sister-in-law happy? And then pay for it because she sure as hell won't, since our kids are our problems, as she stated to my face. You're the a-hole because you don't seem to know what meet in the middle means. She wants her wedding to be child-free. You want her wedding to not be child-free. You think she won't meet in the middle because she's not changing to what you want. It's super common to have group babysitting at the hotel. All your siblings/cousins can pool resources and get a few people to stay a few hours at the hotel and watch the kids. Maybe even have your parents pay for it as part of the wedding fees. If you don't want to go, don't go. But it doesn't seem like you're trying to actually work something out. Yeah, I don't get how child-free wedding translates into I'd have to leave the kids at home. And if OP is going to complain about spending money to bring kids to the location, they'd have to spend that money if the kids were invited. There's really barely any difference. Everyone brings their kids. A couple of cousins or family friends take turns with childcare while the rest go to the wedding. Trust me, as a kid, I hated having to go to weddings. Hanging out at a hotel pool would be so much more appealing to me. Not the a-hole. People are entitled to a child-free wedding, but they also have to understand that it's not going to be realistic for most people to leave their kids for days, especially young ones. This should have been an anticipated consequence of a child-free wedding. Your sister-in-law shouldn't have to change her child-free wedding, but she also doesn't get to be mad at out-of-state parents for not coming. I can't believe I had to scroll so far to find this comment. An invitation isn't a summon. If not taking your young children isn't a viable option, then you're fully allowed to decline. Not the a-hole. You're the a-hole. First of all, you're not fine with it, so stop saying you are. You're just trying to make yourself feel better. Second, you've now orchestrated a full-on boycott of her wedding, whether intended or not, and you seem to think it's funny. That's cruel. I don't think this is about the kids. I think you just don't like her and won't admit it because it makes you look bad. If you love your brother, you would find a way to be there, period. I have a hard time believing that there's no possible way you can group the kids together with a babysitter for a few hours. Of course you can, but you don't want to. I'd be crushed if I were her, receiving this welcome into the family. Also, she's blaming only her sister-in-law, as if her brother has nothing to do with it. The last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for kicking my sister out after she didn't do what she said she would? I, 21 female, had a baby 8 days ago via scheduled cesarean. Father isn't around, and I knew he wouldn't be since day one. My sister, 29, we'll call her Annie, fake name, is recently divorced and suffers with infertility. Every time there's a new baby in the family, she offers to help out. Annie asked if she could stay with me for a few weeks after the baby is born and for the few days before to help out. I said yes, knowing I'd need the help. The problems started from when we came home. Annie takes her, like literally does everything baby-related, except for nappy changes. She creates mess, which I end up having to clean up everything, while trying to cook for myself/order food, and it has to be done to Annie's preference too if I'm ordering. 5 days ago, I started recording the amount of time I spent with my baby versus what Annie did. Over the last 5 days, I spent a total of 8 hours with my baby, Annie nearly all the rest of the time. I tried asking her to step back a bit and help out with chores like she said she would, but she got defensive. Things got on my last nerve today around an hour ago, realizing she hadn't actually given me back my child all day except once to change her. I'm not really sure what got into me, but I lost my cool. I told her to get out and not come back until she can learn to respect that this is not her baby, and stop taking over everything except the gross bits. My mom called me, saying it was an a-hole move since Annie just wants a baby of her own. And I said that I don't care. I have barely got to see my own child. Am I the a-hole? Edited to Ed, said an outburst was caused by her practically refusing to give me my baby. Now for the top comments. My mom called me, saying it was an a-hole move since Annie just wants a baby of her own. But this baby is not available. It's not hers. It's yours and yours only. If she wants one so badly, she should look into adoption. Absolutely not the a-hole. Exactly, not the a-hole. It is important for you to bond with your baby, not only her. She needed to realize that she couldn't push you around and literally hog your baby. Not the a-hole at all. Tell your mom that what your sister wants is not your problem. You want your baby. Pete's sake. Not the a-hole. It sounds like your sister needs some therapy to deal with her infertility. Or just adopt. And that's the end of this video, folks. As always, leave a comment and hit like and subscribe. And if you want more of this content, turn your notification on to get updated on the latest videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe.